It's a Tuesday edition of Talkin Cowboys presented by Black Rifle Coffee Company, the official coffee of the Dallas Cowboys. We are taking your phone calls and your text messages today. It's a Talkin' Tuesday, 888-855-2297. Go ahead and line up the phone calls right now, or you could text in at 817-290-3298. We are going to hear from Cowboys Nation following the 28-16 loss to the Arizona Cardinals on Monday. We've got the entire crew back in the SWBC studios at the Star. Isaiah Stanback, Nick Harris, John Machota. Welcome back, my friend. I'm Kyle Yeomans. John, we haven't heard from you yet. We'll let you start things off. How does what were your overall thoughts on Sunday's loss?
Pretty stunned.
Yeah.
Pretty stunned. I guess it all has to do with what your perspective is on the team and what you think this team's capable of. And I did not think they were capable of playing that poorly, particularly on defense. You know, you lose the three starting offensive linemen. I can understand some issues on that side of the ball, but just watching that game over again yesterday, I just can't believe, like, I don't want to say lack of effort, but there wasn't that, that edge that I'm used to seeing this team play with. And there's just too much talent on that side of the ball. And if we're just being completely honest, where our seat is in the press box, we are directly right behind where the Cardinals run out of their thing for pregame warmups. I'm like, man, this is such a cool angle. But there's nobody on their team that is really I even want to take a video of. I mean, that's literally the level that. I'm being honest. If anybody disagrees with me, tell me an NFL team from top to bottom in terms of just a star power standout star that is worse than that Cardinals team. I'm not saying that Dobbs and Connor and all these guys didn't, Rondell Moore, they didn't play well and stuff like that. But I'm saying that roster to do that to your defense, particularly in the first half, I'm stunned. I really am. It brought me back a little bit to Washington last year at the end of the season. A little bit to the Denver game the year before that. Now, they did have big responses to both those games, but I did not think that this team was capable of playing that poorly. And to be honest with you, it knocks me down a little bit on the whole. I don't think they're on the same category right now with the Eagles and Niners. I think they're a step down, and I didn't think that was the case going into that game. Even knowing, hey, this could be a trap game, 12-point favorite, whatever. You can't sleep on anybody. I still thought, up until the point where even late in the fourth, I'm like, they'll get a touchdown here. They'll be right back in this game. The momentum's all on their side. And to me, the most alarming play was that 69-yard pass to just have somebody that wide open. I mean, I see that stuff on Saturdays. Yep. But on Sundays with a Dan Quinn defense, that was just odd to me. I couldn't believe it. Again, where you're sitting in the press box, you're like, whoa. There's a guy there. I'm pretty sure that they have 11 on the field. He seems like he's an eligible receiver. I don't know why he's 20 yards down the field. No one's near him. Again, Saturdays you see that. Yeah. But from a defense that you think could be the best in the league, that was inexcusable.
I mean, we were talking about Legion of Boom. We're talking about 70 Steelers, 85 Bears. I mean, that was the trajectory through 2 weeks. Yeah, it was just 2 weeks. But none of those things happened to those defenses, right? None of what Arizona did in week 3 happened to the 85 Bears and the 70 Steelers and the Legion of Boom. That just doesn't happen. Now, they were certainly missing Trayvon Diggs, but it wasn't all Trayvon Diggs that was missing.
Oh, if they threw the ball all over the yard and you're just like, man, this secondary's got some work to do, which I couldn't see happening. But I guess after Sunday, I shouldn't say that there's anything I can't see happening because that opened up a new chapter for me where I did not think, but from where this defense is built, I thought that Washington game last year, the Denver game 2 years ago, were gone. I didn't think that they could fall back down to that type of a level. And so that was an eye-opener there that, to be honest, probably won't sit right with me unless they were to come out of these first 5 at 4-1. And you go to San Francisco, you win that game. I could change a little bit on that, but as I sit right now, I see them going 3-2 through those first 5. And who knows? This could be a game they look back on and are like, man, that ends up costing them a division. It costs them, playoffs area, seeding or whatever like that. I don't know, but that one, that there's no, and then the whole talking about wake up call after you played 2 games. Who needs a wake up call after 2 games? That's not needed. I know you got to say something because they were stunned, but still, I don't know why you would need a wake up call after only two weeks of beating the Giants and Jets.
No, it is true, and well said on all occasions. I want to get more into that here in a little bit, but we are going to do some news and notes. We're bringing it back. I mean, we had news and notes with Rob Phillips. We had news and notes with Patrick No-C Walker. Now we're going to start it with Nick Harris. Nick Harris every day is going to give us our news, what you need to write down, what you need to keep aware of for the Dallas Cowboys. Anything stick out from yesterday?
Yeah, so today we're going to highlight the availabilities from yesterday with Mike McCarthy and all three coordinators. Oh, I think I pressed the mute button for a little bit. Mike
Strike
McCarthy, yeah, it was kind of a strike. It was a check swing.
Like a half strike. You checked.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
held up.
Mike McCarthy and all three coordinators, they took time with the media yesterday. We'll start with McCarthy, asking him about red zone problems. He said that they will spend more time on red zone this week, but they're not going to overreact just yet.
So more time in the red zone. I mean, when you're working on more time in the red zone, what are you trying to accomplish there?
It's a point of emphasis.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just putting more on it.
That is all. Just bringing attention to how important it is to your team, that you can't take advantage of the fact that you're getting down there. You got to get down there. You got to capitalize on it. So you just got to bring that back to the forefront to guys and just say, hey, this is not our average portion of the field. Once we work to get down here, we have to end this drive with 6 points.
Yeah.
It's also, that was another part of the game that, there's levels to this. The defensive performance to me is on the top level, but next down, I am surprised that they've gotten through 3 games without throwing a touchdown pass to a wide receiver. I mean, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, I agree. Talking to Dan Quinn yesterday, he was talking about the run defense. Obviously, he was asked about it quite a bit. He called it a tale of two halves, where in the first half they gave up 181 yards on the ground. It's the most for the franchise in 32 years. And then overall, giving up 7.5 yards per play throughout the entire game, the most in 7 years. He said sometimes you just have a performance that you're not pleased with at all. When you walk around our locker room, you had a lot of pissed off people, and they should be. We were not up to the standard that we had set for ourselves. When you're going through a difficult performance, you do grow from them. I would love to say you learn from 40-0, but that ain't the truth. You got to have some adversity and come out the other end to show what you're capable of. These guys are a warrior crew, and they will respond like crazy.
It felt like he was a little it was almost like he was offended in the way that people were talking about the defense and how it didn't look like a Dan Quinn defense. Not offended by the at least by the headlines, because the headlines were what they were and they were the truth. It was more offended because of kind of like what John was talking about initially, of a Dan Quinn defense doesn't look like that. Especially a dominant Dan Quinn defense doesn't look like what they had against Arizona, but they did look like that. It didn't look like a Dan Quinn defense. He said that was one of the things that hurt him the most, I think.
So maybe I'm reading too much in between the lines there. I couldn't really get a read on if he was talking about media saying that or people that text him, because you know how he mentioned later about like people like about the Trayvon Diggs thing, you know, other people in the league reaching out to him and that. So I was kind of like, I wonder if that he's also talking about like other people in the league that were like, damn, you know, that didn't look like your normal defense or something like that. And the thing that he said he was so upset about is the fact that, or he called it, he didn't call it a slap to the face. He said like, I think he said like five fingers. To the face, was the fact that when he looks back on it, he's like, they were right. It didn't look like our defense, you know? So I don't know. Maybe I was reading too much into that, but I don't think he was talking media, but maybe it was, I don't know.
Yeah, you got to the point that I was just about to highlight on that. Dan Quinn always comes out with like an opening statement in his press conferences. He's the only one of the 4 to do it. And he had said in that opening statement, he said, our performance felt like 5 fingers to the face. And whenever everyone was saying, you know, that this defense didn't look like itself, it was 5 fingers to the face. And he said, you know, that was tough because it was true. So I think it's maybe a little bit of self-reflection in that moment as well, and also just being disappointed in the overall effort. Maybe it could be just, you know, people getting on it a little too much. Who knows? But nevertheless, you know, he's going to have an opportunity to bounce back from it. This defense overall against a really good New England team coming up. Next thing, this is really interesting that we dove into with offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer yesterday. Will Grier was signed by the Patriots last week onto their active squad, and he said that he's probably being interrogated by Bill Belichick at the moment for hand signals and anything else that could help them give a little bit of an advantage going into this game on Sunday. And Schottenheimer had a funny quote. He said, Will and Zeke, Ezekiel Elliott being there as well, Will and Zeke know where the bones are buried. Those are things you talk about. We certainly have more than one hand signal for most of our core concepts, and sometimes you can use it to your advantage. Everybody does it. You get a player that's played somewhere, you bring them in to talk about different things, and you're very selective about how much you put into it. I'm excited to see Will, but I'm sure he's being interrogated. It'll be a lot of late nights with the defensive coaching staff.
If only we had somebody on this panel. I don't know who.
I called it Belichick's spy mission.
That
the article.
played for Bill Belichick at some point in his career. I wonder if we had somebody like that. What would they say in this moment?
I don't know. It's called Jesse Holly. Jesse?
No,
Jesse.
no, he's on Hanging with the Boys.
Yeah, I mean, like Shotty said, this is a part of the game. You get somebody on your roster, they have information, they have insight. I mean, is Will Greer showing up isn't going to change the world. You already had Zeke on your team, so any information that you wanted to attain, it's already attainable. If anybody knows it, I think Zeke would understand what was going on. Bringing Will Greer just adds another level to it.
Yeah, but maybe like new offense, new hand signals, new concepts. He's only a month off of it, not 8 months off of it. He did just throw 30 for 34 in that offense, or 29 for 34, or whatever.
I hear you.
Dak Prescott was the play caller in that game.
Dak Prescott was the play caller.
Yeah, I mean, when I was playing with the Giants, I knew all the hand signals for New England. And of course, you pass that information along. When you go, you help you win a ring. So, that's a part of the game.
I think the key sentence was we're very selective about how much we put into it. So I'm sure it'll be maybe once or twice they'll be like, hey, that looks familiar. Maybe look for this, but don't marry yourself to it.
It really comes in play in the 2 minute because, from Shotty's perspective, you could change things up scheme-wise during the game. I could change up some signals, but when it gets hot and heavy and you're blowing and going, the last thing you're thinking about is, what's the new hand signal that we installed this week? No, you're going back to the same old foundational pillars that you have, and I'm going and Dak's doing his thing, and I'm giving my signals, and that's when it comes to play. Those high-intensity 2 minute drill type settings. That's when Dak's going to call what Will knows.
And that's, for the most part, you can't upend that in a week.
No.
There's no way that you could upend that in a week. You could change certain things, like you said, just to throw them off. But outside of that, that's just a minuscule amount of what the entire playbook could open up.
Correct. It'll only be a small portion of the game, possibly, depending on the situation, going into the half or end of the game. But it can come into play for sure.
Does it happen often where you purposefully will put out a sign out there that Will Greer would know, but it's completely opposite from what it was initially?
That's what I'm saying. It would have to be in a 2 minute situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not really doing that during the game.
Yeah.
They're not running no huddle. Dallas is getting to the ball. They're getting out the huddle quickly, getting to the ball, but they're not running no huddle. So it's not really going to come into too much play. Check with me's type of deal. Most of the check with me's that Dallas is running, you don't see Dak out there playing Peyton Manning, where he's up there changing the entire play. With this West Coast offense, you usually just come up. You choose a side that you want to go to. If you need to flip something over, you over, give an over call, because a lot of times the tight ends are on opposite ends, or you're flipping things around. So it's not a lot of hand signals in this offense. So there's not a lot for Will to give away. But if they do find themselves in a 2 minute situation, that's when you can have your antennas up to see, hey, this could possibly hurt you.
See, this is what you do for this game, is that for this one particular one, because of this, you just do the college thing, and you just come out there and you have somebody on the sideline that has one of those signs that has like 4 different. It's got like a Whataburger symbol, Tupac, Taylor Swift,
Kyle's
and
face.
Kyle's face, and
Nice.
when it's that play
I'll
card
smile
being
for
held
the
up.
camera.
I do love how that is used. Well, maybe not as much in college as it used to be, but that always
Just
cracks me up.
random stuff.
Like, how is that not trickled up to the NFL?
Yeah, no, you're right. That's true, because it started high school, and then you got some colleges. Of course, the colleges.
You guys
took it
ever do
over
that
and
when you were in college?
Blew it up.
No, I haven't.
But you were in a conference because to me, when I think of it,
Oregon.
I think of Oregon.
Nobody cared. I was like, well, that looks silly. We couldn't stop them either. So
I was about to say, wait a second.
The pride of my career was that there's a school down in South Texas, Hallettsville. They had used a picture of my dog just because
No way.
a couple of years ago I'd spent a lot of time around that program, and they were like, we want to use your face. And I'm like, I don't want to use my face, but y'all can use my dog. And so I gave them my dog's face. Yeah, it's the pride of my career. I have a picture of it somewhere. I got to find it. But yeah,
awesome.
that's
Yeah,
that's
you're going to
awesome.
have to tweet it out later.
Yeah,
I
for
want to
sure.
see that. That's
Last
funny.
news and note from yesterday, we had asked Mike McCarthy just about injuries, especially all 3 up front on the offensive line. He said he hadn't really had a chance at that point yesterday to see how those guys were doing. They'll know more on Wednesday, but while they were banged up going into the game, not a ton of injuries coming out of the game. Damone Clark had kind of banged up his shoulder a little bit, but it looks like he'll be all right going forward.
by his own teammate.
Stephen Jones was asked on the 105.3, his radio hit on Monday, about the same thing, about Biotish, Zach Martin, and Tyler all being Tyron, Tyler, and Zach. Man, that's confusing. All being back for Sunday. He said it's possible. We'll just have to see how the week goes. You got to take each guy week to week. Is it possible? Yes. Do we know for sure? Absolutely not. So
I don't know what to think in terms of injuries right now. Because like we talked about yesterday, we came into the week, or at least we finished our show on Friday. We were doing the bushwhacker, and we were getting out of there, and we were saying, yeah, we're going to have some offensive linemen back, and then all of a sudden you don't. So hopefully they're all back and ready to go.
Mike McCarthy sounded genuinely surprised by what they had to go through because and felt like it was on him that he didn't get more reps with some of those guys during the week, like a TJ Bass, like Chuma, thinking that, hey, we might have to go with all these guys. I think he was pretty confident from what he was hearing that, hey, I'm going to have at least 2 of these guys for that game. And so it sounds like there was a lot of scrambling going on right before that game to figure out. I mean, Tyron Smith was out there warming up like he normally does. I thought for sure Tyron Smith was playing. And then he came out, fully dressed. I will say when he ran out of the tunnel, he did not look like himself. It did look like it was like, hey, they want me to be in uniform. I'll come out here, but there's no chance I'm going today. Like even in the warm-up lines and the stretching lines, I was like, that does not look like Tyron Smith is going to play.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think that they got the prep time that they were hoping or probably should have gotten with those young offensive linemen. But still, even with that being said, I still think that game was there for them in the second half. I really
no doubt.
do.
Yeah, they still should have been good enough to win that game. And I think most Cowboys fans out there that are frustrated with the performance probably thought the same thing. Probably thought something very similar. All right, when we come back, we're taking your phone calls. We're hitting the text line as well, 817-290-3298. That's the text line. The phone call, 888-855-2297. We're talking to Cowboys Nation when we come back after this.
Todd thought it would be secure to jog in the cheetah savanna. Todd believed the big cat repellent he bought online was reliable. And now, Todd is trying to be faster than this cheetah that can run 80 miles per hour. But the good news is, Todd has AT&T 5G that is fast, reliable, and secure. And he learned the best thing to do is stop running and toss her the backpack with the beef stew. AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure. It's not complicated.
5G requires compatible plan and device. 5G may not be available in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
Black Rifle Coffee Company serves premium coffee to people who love America. When you drink Black Rifle Coffee, you are directly supporting veterans, law enforcement, and first responders in your community. Black Rifle's expert roasters love coffee almost as much as Texas loves football, so it makes sense that America's Coffee partnered with America's team. Go online at blackriflecoffee.com and fuel up with the official coffee of the Dallas Cowboys. That's blackriflecoffee.com to fuel up today.
Cowboys fans, after that move, we've just coined the term Rowdy Replay. Let's roll back the tape.
Okay, there's our mascot Rowdy cheering on the boys. And now he's on his phone, on his Bank of America mobile banking app?
Staying on top of his finances with his virtual financial assistant, Erica.
Bank of America's digital tools are so impressive. Cowboys fans just can't stop banking. Learn more at bankofamerica.com/can't stop banking.
Erica is only available in the English language. You must download the latest version of the mobile banking app, only available on select mobile devices. Message and data rates may apply. Member FDIC.
Welcome back into Dear Doctor, the show where I answer life's questions with an ice-cold can of Dr. Pepper. Sheila, let's hear from our next caller, would you?
Dear Doctor, my friend supported me during a tough time, but what's the right gift that says, thanks for being a shoulder to cry on?
Okay, this one's easy. I say give her a delicious Dr. Pepper. Nothing says, thanks, girl, better than a one-of-a-kind soda. Yes, any Dr. Pepper flavor will do. Now, just a reminder that I don't need to be a real doctor to know that Dr. Pepper is the one you deserve.
Back to Talkin Cowboys.
This segment is brought to you by Quaker Oats, a super trusted superfood. Quaker Oats, the official oatmeal sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys. Welcome back into Talkin Cowboys here on this Talkin Tuesday. We're taking your phone calls. We're answering your text messages. Let's start things off on the phone line. Gary in New Mexico as we go out to the land of enchantment. Gary, what's up? You're on Talkin Cowboys.
Hey, guys. How y'all doing? Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Couple of positive things, and then I got a question for Isaiah that I hope he doesn't take the wrong way. But they really did clamp down on the run in the second half. So it seems like they adjusted and played much better run defense in the second half. The offense, I don't really have a problem with it except for the red zone, but we are running the ball well. We're doing well in between the 20s. We just got to get that red zone stuff fixed. But this brings me to my concern, and I'm not questioning the toughness of the players. Don't get me wrong. But, Isaiah, do you think we're being a little overcautious with some of our players? I mean, because we heard all week, Zach's going to be able to go. Beatos will probably be able to go. And then all of a sudden at the last second, we're sitting 3 offensive linemen. I mean, at some point, don't you just have to, I'm an old guy. Don't you just have to rub some dirt on it and go out there and play?
I respect your question. I appreciate your question. I do believe that there's always that element to it, and I think a lot of these guys that play the game of football, regardless of what team, have to do that because everybody plays hurt. The injuries and hurt are two different things. I explain that to my kids all the time. I do believe that I have wholehearted trust in this training staff. So if they were in a position to play without causing any further damage to something that was going to put you in a bad predicament going forward, then I think that they made the right decision in regards to Tyron. Tyler Biadasz, as soon as I heard that he had a hamstring, I knew he wasn't going to play. I mean, I can't sit up here and say that on the air because I don't know, right? I didn't hear, it's not an official word from the training staff, but anytime an offensive lineman hurts his hamstring, he's going to be out. It just is what it is. Zach Martin, that was a surprise to me in terms of the whole ankle. We understood that he had a couple plays in the previous game that kind of almost really put him out, and that's why they got him out of there. Like, hey, okay, we've kind of we've had our luck. Our luck almost ran out on Zach. So I understand taking care of him, but I understand your concern in terms of putting the team not having their guys when they possibly could have still played. There's give and take to that. You go out there, you play Zach Martin, you play Tyron Smith, and all of a sudden those guys go out there and they make their injuries worse. If you keep them out, they could be healthy within a week. But if you play them, they could be out for possibly 3 weeks if they make it worse, right? So there's give and take on that. So you have to be smart about how you're managing those guys, especially early on in the season.
And I'm not saying that this is the case. I'm just throwing out a hypothetical here. I'm sure there were plenty of people that think going into that game when it starts and you find out, oh, all three of those aren't playing. Is that because it's Arizona? Would it be the same if they were playing San Francisco? I'm just saying that there's a lot of people, I guarantee that. Would it be the same if it was the playoffs? There has to be people that think that. I'm not saying that they would, but just want to know your thoughts on that.
People are going to ask that question. But the reality is you're in the first quarter of your season, and you're talking about guys that you have to have. These aren't skill position players that you just the next man up. Like these guys, like you have to protect these guys. And these guys are going to get beat up. It's not like they may or may not get hit at some point this season. Okay, is it a concussion? Okay, we could probably run them some routes that keep them away from getting hit by safeties. Like, no, these guys are going to get hit every single play. These guys are going to be putting their foot in the ground and talking about ankles and knees. These guys are going to have to bear this weight of other guys for 60. Well, from Dallas's standpoint, they're running 80 plays a game. For 17 games. So there is a management aspect to it, especially when you have older players.
And then to the caller's point, like, talking about how being old school, rub some dirt on it and things like that. I will say that we have more information now than ever before. Mm-hmm. I think that's why you see so much of the, load management in the NBA because of the fact that there just is a lot more data that, and that's why all these guys are all wearing all the, won't say the brand because I don't know which one the Cowboys use.
Yeah, I don't either.
But I think it's, I shouldn't say. I think it's Catapult, but it doesn't matter. But anyway, like they're all wearing
GPS.
They're wearing the GPS monitors on them, like practice, games. I mean, all colleges are like that now too. So it's like there is a lot more information than there used to be. So you have to account for that as well.
Yeah, I was talking with Patrick Walker on the sideline before the game whenever we found out that Tyron was probably not going to be able to go. And he asked me, and it was an interesting question. He's like, if this was week 16 and they were fighting for playoff positioning, do all three of these guys play? And I was like, Probably.
Yeah,
definitely if it's a playoff game. Yeah. Definitely if it's a playoff game.
Yeah, but at that point, again, that goes back to the point I just made in terms of this is load management. Right?
Yeah.
This is like risk versus reward. Mm-hmm. Like if you drop a game, which they did, they drop a game, okay, it sucks. Absolutely it sucks, regardless of who the opponent is. But guess what? You know that these guys are going to be healthy most likely this coming week.
Yeah.
You rather have that going forward than risking them re-injuring or making it worse.
Yeah.
I mean, Cincinnati was holding their breath yesterday.
Yeah.
The other issue with a lot of this is that not only do they have more information, we have more information. We know about all these teams, all these other injuries that if it wasn't for social media and the internet, you probably wouldn't know about a lot of this stuff, let's say 20 years ago, about each individual team. And so I think a lot of people will see these certain things, and it's almost like it becomes, oh, this is the injury? 3 to 4 weeks. This is it? This is because of all these other players. And that's not the case. Human beings, everyone's differently. I mean, I'll give you a great example on the positive side for the Cowboys is Terrence Steele. Most people, if you look at the injury he had, you would not think that he'd be back to where he is this quickly. And then other players might have the same injury, and it might take them a little bit longer. You don't know from player to player what's it going to be. I mean, Steven said yesterday on the radio. Now, he said Tyler, so that could be Smith, could be Biadasz. I took it as he was talking about Tyler Smith. And he said that they thought that was going to be 3 to 4 weeks. And so, he's back Tyler Smith is back, in the third game. So it ended up only being 2 weeks. But, you don't know for sure. So, but there is so much information out there now where you're like, oh, Burrow, calf, Dak had calf. Let's see how many weeks. And he will be back week 7. And if he's not, then there's something wrong. It's like everybody's different. You don't know for sure. I mean, they're projections.
Yeah, and not even to talk specifically about that, but to look ahead and to make those armchair trainer. I mean, you've always had armchair quarterbacks. Now you got these armchair trainers that are out there as well. Let's not put these guys in harm's way. We're going to get that information this week too.
Right.
Whether or not they're in practice, whether they're ready for the game, that's when we're going to see whether or not they could have gone on Sunday. Because if they're both in practice, in pads tomorrow, then it's like, okay, maybe this was a load management. Maybe this was a question mark.
Also to the point, I mean, yes, you're playing Arizona. That plays a role in it as well, right? So not because Arizona is a lesser opponent, but because if your guys are not prepared to go over the next few weeks because you made the decision to play them in week 3, right, versus holding them out for a week, now you don't have your starters against New England's D-line. Now you don't have your starters against 49ers D-line, and good luck with that.
Yeah, that's where a lot of the focus has been is week 5. I mean, we even talked about it last week. It's like, let's go ahead and fast forward. Let's go ahead and be 4-0. And
shoot, both of these guys
didn't work out.
New England's D-line is nasty too.
No, they are. We'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow, right? Or what was that? Thursday is that preview. All right, let's go to Bob in Rio Grande Valley. You're on Talkin Cowboys. Bob, what's on your mind?
Morning, guys. Appreciate you taking my call, and let me tell you, I love your program.
Well, thank you very much.
I've got something for the guy who's one of the 2 guys on the podcast that I consider to be the voice of reasoning. This is for Isaiah. Tell me if I'm missing this, Isaiah.
Okay.
I think that we have the short yardage solution already on our team. I think we have the red zone solution already on our team. And I realize that the guy comes from a small school, but so does Tony Pollard. I'm very, very impressed with Hunter Lipkey. And every opportunity that he's been given so far in the preseason and in the regular season, he has excelled.
Yeah.
He runs like a halfback, even though he's a fullback. He catches like a slot receiver. He gets yak after he catches the ball. He's elusive and he's powerful. I think that he would be utilizing him more in our offense, particularly in the short yardage situations, would be a benefit. What do you think?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I do agree with you that he is a threat and he's a weapon. I think they have been working him in a good amount over the last few weeks. He's earning more trust with this staff. The more he goes out there and continues to execute, I don't think it's a personnel issue. To your point, I don't think it's a personnel issue at all. The more film I watch, the more I believe that these guys are offensively, at least, playing kind of robotic. They're when you're in a new system, you're trying to do it exactly like you see it on paper. When you're confident in the system, you start feeling like I can start making tweaks to how I run this route, right? When I start feeling comfortable, okay, Dak's going to understand versus man coverage, and they're playing off or cover 0 now instead of running up 5 yards, putting my foot in the ground and coming in like it shows on paper. Now I can just take one step and go across because I'm open right now. They're not making those alterations right now. Also, I think that some of the better players on this team are not being utilized correctly in that part of the field. So I think a lot of those things are going to improve, especially when you get your starting offensive line back, because they will run the ball more. Right, so you might see more Lipkey. I think you'll see a good share of him, but I'm not sure if he'll be the one carrying the ball.
Yeah, and the other thing is that right now they are relatively healthy at their skill positions, at least having the guys available. And when you look at it, there's just not that many spots available for Lipkey to get more touches, because are you giving more touches and you're taking Michael Gallup off the field, or Brandon Cooks, or CeeDee Lamb, or Tony Pollard? So then it comes down to, is he getting more than Jake Ferguson? And then in with that tight end group, because they're not going to give it more. I mean, there's only 11 players on the field. You can when the Cowboys are completely healthy, it's pretty cut and dry who are going to get the most touches. So maybe if Lipkey was going to get more, it would probably have to cut into, like a Peyton Hendershot's role. But that's about the only person I can see. Maybe you give him some more work there with with the bigger packages and stuff like that. Just it's tough when they're not going to take a lot of those skill guys off the field to bring in, a tight end / running back / fullback.
Yeah.
First off, I was really scared to ask who the other voice of reason was. Now I'm curious.
Yeah, I want to know who. It's
me.
probably you because of the Hunter Lipkey train.
It had to have been,
Right.
but my ego couldn't handle it not being.
The captain of the Hunter Lipkey fan base over here.
Yeah. Now it's my favorite topic we've ever talked about on the show. He got his first 2 touches on Sunday. He did really well with them. Specifically the handoff, they had a guy that came right through the A-gap, and he just kind of tiptoed around him and spun around him really quick. It should have been only about a 1-yard gain. Ended up turning it into like a stumble and grumble 9 yards. Really loved what I saw there. And actually, it was something I kind of thought about coming out of the game. Can he be used more in short yardage situations? Can they use him more in red zone situations? I think there's definitely an opportunity there. But again, get that offensive line healthy and let's see.
That's how you know Bob is a longtime listener of this show, is that he called Isaiah the voice of reason. We used to call Isaiah that like all the time, right when we first started on this podcast. And then he also listens currently because he brought up Hunter Lipkey, and that's the Hunter Lipkey hype train over here.
I mean, I will say I follow a lot of different people that cover this team and cover the NFL, and I don't know many people outside of Isaiah that were talking about how, like, don't sleep on this Arizona Cardinals team, don't sleep on this Arizona Cardinals team. And I definitely had my pillow and blanket. I was sleeping. I'll say that right now. Up until even kickoff, I was like, nah. I mean, they'll give them a little bit of a run early on, but I'm like not even fourth quarter. I'm like second half, they'll come out. They'll straighten this out.
I will say 75 yards from Joshua Dobbs. We didn't get a chance to talk about it yesterday.
Nope.
When he broke off that 44-yarder on the read option.
You puckered up?
I texted Kyle some expletives.
I thought about looking back at you when it happened. I was like, I'm not going to do it because I know that he's already worried enough, so I'm not going to bring this up.
I definitely texted Kyle a bad curse word. And
you should have seen Kyle's face. Kyle was like,
oh
my God.
You should have seen my face.
I stood up. I was sitting down. I had just settled into my chair, and I was getting ready to get my notebook out and start taking notes, and I stood up, and I was like, no, like just yelling at the screen. Everybody in there outside of Isaiah were like, what is this dude talking about?
I'm sitting there literally like this.
Yeah.
He ended the game with 2 carries for 51 yards, and he had that at the end of the first quarter. So they just gave him more opportunities.
If they would have did more of that, he would have.
He definitely would have.
And I'll say this, I'll give him a chance. Let's see a few more weeks. But if this is a team that wins like 3 or 4 games, I'm sorry, like I'm not going to think any differently than I did before the game.
Yeah.
They played great, had a great game plan, everything went great. Now, is that all of a sudden they got lightning in a bottle and this team's about to roll? And I'm not saying make the playoffs or anything.
Talking about Arizona?
Yeah. But if they're going to win like 8 or 9 games, I'll sit back and be like, man, I never saw that coming with that team. And I'm talking even if Kyler comes back and he's great and whatever like that. I'm talking about like when I look at that team right now, that looks like a team to me that's drafting in the top 10.
Yeah. Joshua Dobbs getting his first career win as a starter. He was 0-4.
He was good.
Before that.
Happy for Buddy.
He played well.
He's actually a really good dude. Really good quarterback.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's go to Brian in Kansas City. We'll go. Brian, hold on for 1 second. We do need to take a break, so we'll go to Brian in a second. I didn't look at the clock beforehand. That one's on me, guys. I will get to Brian, and we'll answer some of your text messages when we come back here on Talkin Cowboys.
They say champions are remembered, but legends are never forgotten. United Ag & Turf offers a winning lineup of John Deere equipment built to tackle any challenge on and off the field. Legendary John Deere tractors, combines, residential mowers, commercial mowers, compact construction equipment, Gator utility vehicles, and a full line of golf and sports turf equipment. United Ag & Turf, the official Ag & Turf equipment supplier of the Dallas Cowboys. Visit unitedagandturf.com to find a location near you.
Are you ready to take coffee off your grocery list forever? Black Rifle Coffee Club is here to help. As a coffee club member, you'll get your favorite coffees roasted, packaged, and shipped to your door free of charge on your preferred schedule. Set it, forget it, and never run low on coffee again. Members also get exclusive deals on coffee, products, and discounts from partner brands. Ease your mind and let Black Rifle worry about your coffee supply. Go to blackriflecoffee.com to join the coffee club today.
It's the official men's skincare brand of the Dallas Cowboys, Jack Black. And right now, Cowboys fans can get 15% off their $75 order. Plus, because every deal needs a playmaker, your order will include a free 5-piece skincare set and free shipping. The Jack Black Playmaker is 4 of Jack's favorites and a full-sized intense therapy lip balm. Make a play for the playmaker at getjackblack.com/Cowboys with the code CowboysVIP. That's getjackblack.com/Cowboys jackblack.com/Cowboys with the code CowboysVIP.
Todd thought it would be secure to jog in the cheetah savanna. Todd believed the big cat repellent he bought online was reliable. And now, Todd is trying to be faster than this cheetah that can run 80 miles per hour. But the good news is, Todd has AT&T 5G that is fast, reliable, and secure. And he learned the best thing to do is stop running and toss her the backpack with the beef stew. AT&T 5G. Fast, reliable, secure. It's not complicated.
5G requires compatible plan and device. 5G may not be available in your area. See att.com/5G for you for details.
Back to Talkin' Cowboys.
This segment of Talking Cowboys is brought to you by Invisalign, the official smile of the Dallas Cowboys. We have Isaiah Stanback, John Machota, Nick Harris, Chris Beam in the back. I'm Kyle Yeomans. Let's go to Brian in Kansas City. Sorry for the tease, Brian, but you are on Talking Cowboys. We're ready to go.
Good morning, gentlemen.
What's going on?
Morning.
Well, I was wondering if you played basketball, Kyle, because that was a pretty good head fake you gave.
Hey, I like it. I'm not as much of a ball player as Nick Harris to my right. That's the real hooper in the group.
Damn right.
I'll tell you. Hey, so, at first, Kyle, every time I call in, I try to remember this, and I never do. I want to just tell you how much I love the draft show and appreciate all the work you guys put into that. It is absolutely fantastic for people like me who don't have time to try to figure all that stuff out. A great way to just listen in and get some really good information from people who have studied those players.
Well, I appreciate that, Brian. Thanks for that.
So my question is, a lot of people talked about, having 3 offensive linemen out, asking how much that changed your game plan. And I hate to do this because everybody's asked Isaiah specifically a question this morning, but being the quarterback in the room, I'm just curious, how much of that, how does that get into, I know you can't speak for another man, but when you're preparing and in the game, in the heat of the moment, how much of your mentality does that affect not having your guys with you? And I'll hang up and listen. Have a good one, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the question. So there's 2 parts to that. There's the professional side where it's like, okay, next man up, doesn't matter. I'm going to execute the game plan. And then you got the real version of you who's like, dang, man, like, all right, I'm going to be I have a little bit less time, with a do-over than I do with Tyron. That's just the reality. Man, we may not be able to run up the middle as much as we wanted to because we're missing our, Zach Martin, So there's some actual truth to some of the things that go on in your head. You still try to go out there and execute your game plan, but coaches are making changes, players are making changes, players are making very educated decisions based upon the reality of the personnel that's out there. So there's really 2 guys. You got the professional side sitting on one side, and you have the real version sitting on the other shoulder, and it's a real balance. But you still have to go out there and execute. That's the professional side of you. You still got to go out there and make it happen. The offensive line honestly didn't play that bad. There were individuals who didn't have great showings, but holistically, I don't think that it was a bad performance by them.
There's a couple of text messages that are kind of around that. I don't have a name on this one specifically, but it's talking about Dak Prescott missing reads. And you've talked about that a couple times in the past, couple years in the past. Of it happens for every quarterback, but it's happened significantly for Dak, especially these last 2 seasons. Did you see any more of that on Sunday, and is that something that you should probably keep an eye on?
Yeah, I mentioned, was it Gannon, the head coach, former defensive coordinator for Philadelphia. I mentioned that during my weekly review that I guess it was on Thursday, right?
Yeah.
My scouting report that he has given Dak problems. Dak has struggled with that. He does a great job disguising his coverages. It showed up again. It did show up again. Dak got lucky. There was about 3 balls that should have been picked off that Dak should not have thrown. There were some old characteristics of Dak that crept back in this most recent week, and he just didn't. It wasn't apparent to the general public because they weren't picked off. They were just kind of batted down or tip balls that kind of went as incomplete. But the decision behind throwing them was like, bro, what are you doing?
Do you think that's a byproduct of having a makeshift offensive line and having that other side, that other shoulder, or is that just
Nope. I think
performance?
I think it was just bad. I think it was just bad performance. He didn't have the greatest of his showings. And like I said, luckily, I mentioned this last year. I think one time where I was like, hey, there was a couple games was like he should have had a few picks. And it's like, oh no, it wasn't that bad. And the next game, it showed up, and that time they got picked off, right? So I'm hoping that he doesn't revert back to what it was. A lot of those decisions that I'm referring to really came when he got out of the pocket. A lot of times when he's in the pocket, it's really 1, 2, 3, get it out, right? Or catch, set your feet, throw. Just because how this offense is kind of created. But when he got out of the pocket, he was still starting. He went back to trying to force things that weren't there.
On those three that you're talking about, did you find them to be worse, same level? How did they compare to the interception?
Well, the interception was a very scripted. I don't want to say that's not the best word to use. That play was dialed up. Like they knew what the coverage was going to be.
Telegraphed.
Yeah, they knew what it was going to be, right? So just because you know what it's going to be, and just because you see the coverage as you practiced it, doesn't mean that everything got executed the way it should have been. B. Cooks didn't run the best of routes. Dak should not have thrown the ball the way he threw the ball. I think the read was right, but the timing on that particular play has to be so precise. The ball has to be absolutely perfect, because if you go back and watch it, if that guy doesn't pick it off, then there's literally the two safeties that were split safeties, which is why this play was ran, right? He's faking as if he's running the over route. He runs it off that middle linebacker, puts his foot in the ground. He's supposed to go over the top. I ran that route 1,000 times in practice. It's just a great scheme, but it has to be done correct, because if you throw the ball with low trajectory, he gets picked off by a 6'4" linebacker.
I think what he tried to do instead was like zip it by his ear, and there was no zip at all.
There's no zipping.
Zip.
I mean, there's no zipping on that. The play, it has to be the perfect environment for that play, and it just wasn't the perfect environment. So you have to either throw a perfect ball with perfect timing, or you got to come off of that read, and that decision obviously didn't happen.
I want to hit some of the text messages that we've been getting. One of my favorites so far is a really good question from Patrick in Las Vegas. Was the problem on the run defense just a scheme issue or a lack of execution issue? Where does it start from stopping the run, Nick, whenever you look back at the film? Is execution, scheme, where does it need to start first?
I don't think it was necessarily a scheme issue. I think Arizona had the right scheme, though. I mean, it was a lot of pull action. Offensive linemen were designed to get into the second level. Everyone had a responsibility pre-snap, and it was a lot of those guys were getting into the second level with Marquise Bell or Donovan Wilson, guys that were trying to come down and defend the run. And you could look at the Joshua Dobbs run. Donovan Wilson, he just misses the hole, so that's just bad gap integrity.
Yeah.
He was supposed to come around to the outside. He just never. Joshua Dobbs never even faked to go inside. He was coming around the whole time. Donovan Wilson just missed coming in. There was a big play that I believe it was on the Rondale Moore touchdown, the 45-yarder, where Marquise Bell got held up in the second level. I mean, it was just a really good block coming in, and Marquise couldn't do anything about that. That's just a really good scheme by Arizona. And there was one where they had a receiver come into the hole, and they were able to lead the way for James Conner. James Conner picked up about a 50 to 20-yard gain. So there was a lot of pull action, and we hadn't seen a lot of that in the first 2 weeks. And I think that second level, it's still young. I think they were taking it back a little bit. I think that was a huge contributor to the run defense problems. But overall, the biggest problem, there was no push up front. Guys were getting flushed out completely. I mean, Micah Parsons was almost ineffective as he could be in the run game. DeMarcus Lawrence had a couple of big plays, but I've always said on the show, I think he's the best run defender on that defensive line. He was getting flushed out. I mean, they were trying to take the edges completely out and just ram that interior, and they did a great job of it.
Those big plays in the first half, the four really big runs, 20-plus runs, all to the left, all the way from DeMarcus Lawrence, I think I felt like probably were on purpose. Even one of them on what I call the Kyle play, where Vander Esch is the right edge and Micah's up over the center. One of them that turned into one of those big plays like that as well. But I'm just always going to think of it as a Kyle play now, because of that question to Dan Quinn when you asked him about it at training camp, and Dan didn't want to do it. He asked Dan at training camp about on those plays where
how did it become a Kyle play?
Yeah, how is it a Kyle play?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
I was like, wait a second.
I'm an idiot.
The Nick play?
It's the Nick play.
That's right. I'm sorry. It was Nick that said it to him. I'm like,
I was like, wait a second. What are you talking about?
My bad. I'm sorry.
How many fingers
You were
on the
looking
John?
at him.
I'm an idiot.
No, it's funny. That's
good.
good.
Sorry.
good.
Yes, a Nick play. Yes, my bad. I'm an idiot.
I was like,
No,
how
you're
did it
good.
turn to me? I was
I'm
like,
sorry.
Nick was the one that asked the
I don't know
question.
why.
Like a 50
Yeah, that's
cent
right.
beam, and I'm gonna. What did he say? Get on me for?
That's right. Yeah.
Whenever
Sorry, when Nick
penalties,
said it,
whenever
sorry.
penalties come into fruition, that's when it's a Kyle
right, you're right. My
situation.
bad. I'm
Whenever
sorry.
I ask about penalties,
bad, Nick.
that's when
Sorry.
it happens like that. That's funny though. I mean, there's a ton of these text messages. I'm trying to bunch a bunch of them together. This one specifically from the 570 says, watching Philadelphia run against Tampa Bay last night provided some more of the concern with the run defense. Of course, you've seen what Philadelphia can do. New England can run the ball too. They can tote the rock as well. How concerned are you going into these next 3 games, Isaiah, whenever it comes to slowing down the run, if those things aren't fixed?
New England, I'm not too worried. I think Dallas does a relatively good job against teams that just line up and come downhill. Like I mentioned last week, Arizona proposes an issue because of their style of run, right? They run the zone read scheme. They do a good job with a lot of movement, a lot of misdirection. Misdirection kills this defense and really puts their feet in quicksand. They just stop their feet, and they're like, okay, now what's happening? And then the second level, Van Der Esch took terrible angles this week. I mean, he's not fast as it is, so you can't take a bad angle and be slow. It's just a bad combination. And then, defensive ends got taken out of the game because the zone read holds defensive ends. Running quarterbacks hold defensive ends. So when you have a defensive end that's in a wide 9 technique and all of a sudden he stays out there, well, there's a gaping hole right on the inside, especially when you're running stunts with your defensive line, right? You don't have gap discipline. So those type of schemes, San Francisco proposes those same issues, obviously, because all the misdirection and motions and all the things at the snap of the ball. New England, not as much. I don't think that's going to be as much of a struggle. They're going to be adamant about trying to come downhill and run the ball. Obviously, that's Coach Belichick, but Billy O'Brien wants to throw the ball, so that's going to be the struggle.
How about when Dan was asked about making sure it was Dan now? All these names are messed up, but when Dan was asked specifically about the linebackers, how he did not want to call any of them out, so he turned it into, let me just tell you about the 3 people that did play well.
Yeah,
and it was like
right.
DeMarcus Lawrence, Malik Hooker, and Deron Bland. And like after I tweet that, there's so many people that were throwing Hooker under the bus for that big play.
Yeah, listen,
it was not Hooker.
Osa did really well. Osa's been balling all year.
Yeah.
He's been doing a great job of getting penetration. D-Law obviously did a good job of getting back there. Goldston, when he got back there, he was doing a great job as well. Big Hankins is Big Hankins. It's just guys are just like to your point. I showed this on the film room last week. Guys are just getting washed, and Arizona does a good job of that. When you can wash, even if one man has bad gap discipline and you can get him turned, and that defensive end staying out there, you have 2 gaps of openness. So big runs are going to happen, especially if your second level is taking bad angles.
So who else are going to be major problems then? Going forward,
I mean, I'm not going to look past the next couple of weeks, but I think New England, run-wise, I'm not threatened by them run-wise. Will they be persistent? Yes, they are very persistent and bullheaded. If they have even an inch that they can take, they're going to take it. But I think they want to throw the ball. The tight ends is where you need to have your attention at this week, and who's going to be guarding those guys. But San Francisco is going to run the ball 40 times at Dallas. They don't care. Yeah. They do not care.
Man, the way Philly ran the ball last night, they looked really good. Yep. The only thing that I think could get in Philly's way is they forced the pass way too much. Like when they don't even need to.
They haven't got. That's because that offensive coordinator. They haven't got in sync yet.
It's wild. But like there were times they shouldn't have even been throwing in a situation, and they were just forcing things downfield.
It's like they were trying to prove to themselves that they can throw it.
Exactly.
We've got it in the bag. It's happening, but it didn't.
Yeah, it looked strange at times. But their running game, really, really good. DeAndre Swift,
they can run.
Man, he's their guy.
Yeah.
He's their guy.
All right. Well, great questions all the way across the board today. I thought all 3 callers were fantastic. Gary, Bob, Brian, our text line was blowing up. We didn't even get close to all the texts.
Thanks for the engagement, y'all. We appreciate it.
Every Talkin' Tuesday, we're taking the phone calls, we're taking the text messages, may even sprinkle in a couple tomorrow. But we have got the defensive preview tomorrow. What is the defense? Going to sprinkle some more into? What does the defense look like in a rebound effort against Ezekiel Elliott and the New England Patriots?
Freaky Zeke's back.
I asked Osa Odigizua last night on the Cowboys Hour. I was like, have you thought about hitting Zeke yet? And he goes, actually, I have. So they're already starting to get into it. Awesome. Really excited to talk about that defensive preview. Plus, we're going to have John's National Storylines segment, the debut of a brand new segment here on Talkin Cowboys. But that does it for us here on a Talkin Tuesday. For Chris Beam, Isaiah Stanback, John Machota, Nick Harris, I'm Kyle Yeoman saying so long from the Star in Frisco. We'll see you tomorrow on Talkin Cowboys.
You guys are out. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, Beam.
Thanks, Beamer.
Thanks, Beamer.
Sorry, Nick.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!